We want a creation of a society where your gender has no bearing whatsoever on the assessment of your capacity. You should be able to wear what you want to wear, do what you want to do with your own body.
I could not think of a better way to kick off this new season than with my dear friend, ALOK. ALOK is that person that gave me the language and the courage to actually step up to the plate and be who I really am.
Pain shouldn't define your existence. Pleasure can.
If I can turn into a giggler,
You are really a jaded mother. People are going to see you giggling and be like, I can be that. I was so homophobic and so transphobic to myself. What I found is that safety doesn't come from external validation. Safety comes from authenticity.
they're hanging us in Iran because of our gender expression and because of our homosexuality. What is going on here that is possessing men to behave this way?
The reason why trans people piss off people so much.
Welcome to season 2 of Reset the Algorithm. I've missed you, and I could not think of a better way to kick off this new season than with my dear friend, ALOK. There are people in your life that sometimes sit you down and have a tough conversation that actually implode your entire identity, that your ego just literally shrivels up and dies right in front of them. And for me, ALOK is that person. ALOK is that person that called me out, called me in, and gave me the language and the courage to actually step up to the plate and be who I really am. They gave me the comfort and love I needed to really explore non-binary existence, what trans meant to me, and really how my queerness comes to life as a diaspora child. ALOK is the pride and joy of the diaspora. We all look at ALOK as people in the diaspora and have such a tremendous amount of gratitude for the courage they bring to every conversation they have. I look at ALOK as someone who is fearless, has courage, is brave, filled with love and tenderness in a way that I've really actually never seen in another human being. I love ALOK, and I could not think of a better person to kick off this second season with. So let's get into it.
Hi.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm contemplative.
Perfect. This is my favorite mood of yours. Welcome to Reset the Algorithm. I've been working on this show very quietly over the past year, so I'm very pleased and honored to have you. Thank you for making time.
Thanks for having me.
I thought this could be a really special show because of how we know each other. I wanted for my listeners to sort of back up into when I first laid eyes on you and met you. I met you when you came to BeautyCon as a guest. We programmed you on a panel to talk about gender and body positivity. I knew as soon as I saw you, not just that you were a star, that you would change the vernacular of how people think about themselves, but that you were especially someone that I knew that would change something for me. I think at this point in my life, I had been struggling with my own internal homophobia, my own internal transphobia. I didn't really have the words for my own internal non-binary phobia. I had played with words like two-spiritedness, and that, that wasn't exactly right from like an appropriation perspective. I sort of just walking through the world as a butch lesbian. When I saw you, it shook me to my core because it was almost like ancient Persia walking off the page of a book. And you saw something in me and you. And I was just very curious to know, what did you see?
Yeah, that was 2018. I remember the outfit that I was wearing. I remember my makeup and my hair. I remember being so nervous and excited because I felt like for so long, beauty was a space that was used to police me out of it and say, I am this way because this is what I think is beautiful. Screw what you think, because beauty is who I am. I remember meeting you and being like, whoa, this is not someone who I thought would be in a beauty space either. There was an affinity from both of our presumptive dislocation from that normative beauty industry, and knowing we have a different agenda here. We have a different awareness here. We have a different archive of beauty. We have different frames of reference.
As we became friends, I remember we had lunch, and I'll never forget this lunch, where you gave your impression of me and my gender expression. Do you remember what you said to me?
No.
It's so good. You said, no one's going to see you for who you are if you're showing up this. It was almost like you were telling me something that I wanted to say out loud, but I couldn't say it.
Hmm.
I remember we were sitting in the wing eating a quinoa bowl or something. And you were like, you're this busty lesbian that shows up almost like angry, like you're not your authentic self. And it wasn't like telling me, it wasn't like was a judgment. It was like a invitation for me to say. And, I think you said something about how it sort of occurred as if I was like hiding behind this chest, that I was sort of stuck in there. And I remember, like, I can't explain it. It was like a half crying, half screaming, half excited that someone could see, because I'd grown up around queer and trans people, trans men, trans women, but I couldn't really I didn't fit in that box. Do you remember this conversation?
It really feels like a scene in a TV show.
Well, how did it occur for you?
We were just at this predominantly white cis woman vibe. And I remember that similar sense of, we're not like the other people here. What's interesting is I feel like I grew up in a generation where we started to have this vocabulary, but I remember us talking about how your peers were still steeped in a binary way. I remember saying to you my own journey of learning Indian history, learning that there had always been people like me, and realizing that I could never separate my gender from my race. And I remember something lighting up in you being like, yeah, I'm not like these other white trans people. The way that I perceive myself is fundamentally different. And I remember being like, that's so real. And we get so mind fucked when the only words that we have to describe ourselves and the only meanings that people have for woman, for man, for masculine, for feminine originate and are located in white people, and they don't relate to us. And so it was a conversation not just about gender dysphoria, but a conversation about being lost in time and place, of being from everywhere and nowhere at the same time, of not having community and feeling lonely even in the places where you're supposed to feel community. And I remember helping articulate that chaos for you and being like, you're not crazy.
It was really a funny conversation. And you recommended this book that Roya had been trying to get me to read, Women with Mustaches and Men with Beards. I bought it and took it home, and I'm like, Roya, this book. And she's like, do you see this book by your bookshelf? I've been trying to get you read. A lot of people know I've been very public about having top surgery a few years ago, and I credit you for that. You are my gender euphoria mentor. I owe you a lifetime of gratitude. I cannot explain how much euphoria I have inside my body, how much I love just walking around my house with my shirt off. It's like, I feel like I've won the body lottery. I just wanted everyone to share, a lot of people wonder because
I feel like we didn't have the language to articulate what it felt like unless we lived it. So it's hard to explain it. It's like telling people there are colors that exist that you can't see yet. There's dimensions of comfort and leisure and relaxation that you've not experienced. And that's what's so hard, is because I feel like the only narratives we grew up with is that if we take the steps to actualize ourselves, then we're going to experience loneliness and judgment and persecution and discrimination. And sure, there's some of that. But alongside that is presence. And that's where I try to speak about gender from. It's a feeling that is so intangible that makes life livable again. And you begin to realize, oh my God, I was miserable. Now I know there's another way to be. There's a grief in that too, because it's like, oh my God, I could have experienced this so long before. Why was I denying myself the sweetness? That gives me a lot of empathy for people, because I was presented with many opportunities before I stepped into my truth. And what I feared now looking back, and I'm curious if that's the case for you, was actually being well. I think growing up, the only way I knew how to be was unstable and pining and yearning and exiled. So when presented with an opportunity to actually be well, I was like, no, that's not for me. I think a lot of the work I've had to do on the other side is be like, I get to have a good time. Someone like me gets to be chill. And that's like a lot of neural rewiring, because that's hard for me to believe sometimes.
I honestly believe you were my person because we both are immigrant children. Our families come from another place. I needed someone that could understand, whether it's the Middle East, South Asia, or Asia, like this other time and place, this other experience. For me, this has been a life-changing moment. It's weird how I just find myself having random moments of joy. Like, it's just the weirdest thing, and I can't get over it. I literally feel stupid sometimes because I just giggle, and I never used to giggle, ever. Like, I never used to giggle. Now I giggle all the time. I know it's been a real adjustment for everyone in my life because I think they're sort of meeting this person that you and Roya saw before everyone else.
As you're speaking, it makes me think. The way it's always been is that we find each other and we give each other permission to be. And it wasn't through reading books. It wasn't through like going to a library. It was just spotting one another and being like, that's neat. And that's why I think there's so many efforts right now to undermine our visibility. It's because they know that if people don't see an alternative, they believe that they have to stay in the gender cage they were assigned at birth. They want to deny people that possibility. When you take this journey, which I think is a sacred journey of authenticity, you become a portal of possibility for so many other people. So it's like what you saw in me, now you're going to bring tenfold to other people. People are going to see you giggling and be like, I can be that. And that's the sort of ripple effect, the ricocheting, that I think is so magnetic and powerful, that often gets pathologized. They'll call it contagion, or like it's something wrong, but it's actually something really beautiful to be able to meet an honest mirror and to be able for the first time to drink from a reservoir that actually feels fulfilling and not poisonous.
And if I can turn into a giggler, like, you know, like
That's so true. You
like,
were really a jaded motherfucker.
like
so
I
that-
was a jaded, calloused, unhappy human.
Yeah.
And now I'm just giggling and it's stupid. I can't explain it.
Do you feel like this joy has made you parent differently?
1,000%. 1,000,000%. Yesterday, Neve and I put like glitter freckles on and slime and play and dancing. I never used to dance. Look, I never danced. I would never dance in public. Ever. I felt so much shame and so like my body's like jiggling everywhere. My clothes don't fit right. It makes me want to cry actually when I think about it. Like how many times I stood at a dance floor and I wanted to dance and didn't. And now I just dance and it's fun. I can't explain it. I don't think people fully understand what it feels like to be stuck in something that feels incorrect and not you know, it's I don't even like saying incorrect, just not authentic. Didn't feel like me because I am someone who likes to dance.
I actually think they do know what that feels like, but it's become so permanent. They think that's the only way. The reason why trans people piss off people so much is we're just being honest. We're like, hey, everyone, this sucks. This is a sham. And I want something better for myself. And I actually want to have a good time and not wait to die to like experience levity. And then people are like, no, what do you mean? We have to suffer. There's this commitment to suffering as making you a better person, like elevating this kind of commitment to martyrdom of, oh, because I'm in pain, therefore I'm virtuous.
Yes.
And we're actually saying out loud, like, pain shouldn't define your existence. Pleasure can. And that really scares people. So what I read a lot of the backlash against this too is a confession that a lot of cis people feel the exact same way. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying a lot of these cis people are meant to be trans and non-binary, but I'm saying they're repressed emotionally. They're living a character. They're cosplaying as something that they're not. They're trying to please other people. They're doing all the things that we did. And that's why I've kind of reframed being trans as like, this is a privilege because I got to wake up. And I'm so grateful that I had some disjuncture, something that wasn't right. So I could really do this larger spiritual journey of not saying who's the gender I want to be, but who's the kind of person I want to become. I think a lot of our colleagues who the world is made for, they just are coasting on autopilot, and then they'll turn 50 and look at their lives and be like, I don't know who I am. And we had the luxury of being able to be like, no, I'm going to do something different. And I guess that's what I've been really trying to speak about recently is like just tired of being defined by oppression, discrimination, and violence. I want to amplify my joy, my wonder, my sense of stability. Yes, there are so many awful antagonistic forces, but I have me. I have my own back. And that's not something a lot of people have. I get to look in the mirror and be like, bitch, it's me. And that's so powerful.
I could not agree more. It is a privilege of my life to be able to have experienced this. And I know that my job now is to pay it forward. In the spirit of paying it forward, I really wanted to get your thoughts on, as you know, I've been working very intensely on the women's movement, the freedom movement, both in Iran and Afghanistan over the past few years, gender apartheid through the lens of a legal policy perspective that there are laws meant to police women as second-class citizens. So gender apartheid is used to describe the systematic oppression, discrimination, and segregation of a specific group based on gender. Meryl Streep recently said that a female cat has more rights in Afghanistan than a woman. And women in Iran are being brutalized and beaten, often to death, if they don't abide by these gender apartheid laws. How do you think the gender apartheid system even developed? How did it even get here?
Well, that's going to be like a 2-hour lecture. So I'm going to try to be really...
It's meant to be a thought starter
Yes.
because what I'm trying to do through the lens, like since this show is brought to you by our nonprofit Global Freedoms, which is about fighting systemic fascism and being a human-centric amplifier of people doing good work, I want people to zoom out and understand that our struggles are intertwined.
Yeah.
And
sure.
yes, this is a 2-day lecture from you, but I think for some people it's a thought starter.
Yeah. What I would say is, in order to resist patriarchy, which is in Afghanistan, Iran, and also here in the United States, where there are similar attempts to ban reproductive freedoms, to confine women to the domestic realm, to punish anyone who deviates from prescribed gender role. All of that is because of a structure called the gender binary. So what often gets framed is that promoting trans and non-binary rights is somehow subtracting from an emphasis on women's rights. And that's just incorrect. Because the reason that women are subordinated is because of the structure that says there's only 2 options, men, women, men are superior, women belong here. So if we really want to get at the root of what patriarchy is, it's the division of society into 2 genders, and then the assignment of roles to those genders. So it's not just that we want parity and equality for women and men, but we also want a creation of a society where your gender has no bearing whatsoever on the assessment of your capacity. And right now, there's all of these gender stereotypes that get seen as reality, that women are prone to hysteria, less intelligent, sexual temptresses, all of these stereotypes that are just patriarchal tomfoolery that posture themselves as reality. And so a lot of the work that I'm trying to do is to say, like, when we create a world where each person gets to determine what their own gender is and what that means to them, that is a way of challenging these fascistic gender roles. It's not just about the promotion of women's dignity and safety, of course, but it's about actually saying that there's no one way to be a woman. So we can't protest one regime of gender norms with another regime of gender norms. And I think that's what often happens in a lot of mainstream feminism. We'll say, okay, you're defining women as weak and subordinate. Well, we're saying women are this, this, this. But what if we took it step farther, and we actually said, what if we gave it up to each individual to decide what it means to them to be a woman, to be a man, or to be whatever? There's an intimate connection between gender roles and governance and the rise of authoritarianism. How do you discipline a people into authority? You deny them ownership of their own body. What we're advocating in our self-determination movement is that you should be able to wear what you want to wear, do what you want to do with your own body, name yourself, choose your own gender. That idea of self-determination or self-sovereignty is incompatible with a governmental apparatus that says you have no freedom. What's frustrating is that gender issues are often seen as marginal or not as serious as larger issues around censorship or criminalization, but they're intimately connected because it's a way of teaching people you don't own yourself. And that's why across the world, you see women and trans people on the front lines of movements for democracy. They understand the interconnection between, if I can't be trusted to govern my own self, how are we allowed to actually have a representative democracy? The micro and the macro is connected.
One of the things that pulled me into the Women Life Freedom work is that a large amount of the protesters are queer and queer identifying in Iran and are actively advocating for they're hanging us in Iran because of our gender expression and because of our homosexuality. By law, they are forcing people like me to have gender reassignment surgery. I don't know if you've seen these films about what is going on. There's refugees in Turkey that we talk to and work with who are shunned from their families, from society. It's not a coincidence. I have top surgery and immediately I'm thrust into this work. Women cannot sing in Afghanistan. They will be stoned to death inside FIFA stadiums that the Taliban has now taken over. Why do you think this erasure of women and girls, like if you had to think of like a simple or short, like what is going on here that is possessing men to behave this way? Why are they threatened?
Mm-hmm. They hate themselves and they take it out on women and queer people. Wherever there's aggression, there is repression, some emotional silencing. Whenever I'm feeling brittle at someone being violent, I try to bring that back into me and be like, when was I violent? And I was so homophobic and so transphobic to myself, so misogynistic to myself because of my own self-hatred. And I think that there's something powerful and sacred about femininity and about gender fluidity that makes men fear it in themselves, and then that gets externalized elsewhere. When I'm talking about redefining gender norms and roles, I'm also talking about men. We need new models of masculinity that actually revere and love women and femininity. Struggles being led by transmasculine people. I get annoyed when I see male feminist projects who aren't acknowledging that it's transmasc folks who are really out here saying, hey, masculinity doesn't have to be this draconian, toxic, controlling, authoritative thing. It can be ethical, generous, kind, warm, compassionate.
Giggling.
Yes, we need to create new ways of being. And I think that's so much of what I love about being trans is I see people constantly reinventing what it means to be a man or a woman or masculinity or femininity. And that's a generous resource for all people. So once again, there's a framing of trans issues as marginal, but I actually think what we're doing with gender could heal the entire world. I see trans men coming up with models of manhood that could really heal cis men. And I see so many trans women coming up with models of womanhood and femininity that could really heal so many cis women. So their own transphobia is actually preventing them from getting where they want to go.
This episode is brought to you by Global Freedoms, a nonprofit media platform amplifying global freedom movements through storytelling, culture, and coalition building, and supporting human rights and challenging censorship through powerful creative media. Follow Global Freedoms on Substack and social to learn more. Trolley AI, the system behind operations and production workflows that keep founder-led teams moving. It's how we scale without losing clarity. Learn more at withtrolley.ai. And this is often why I read your work or think about you as I look at the world today, which is in utter and complete turmoil. And I could not be more embarrassed and ashamed of the things that I'm seeing done, both as an American and as an Iranian, for me, knowing that I'm so involved on all sides of what I see. If you zoom out to the Congo and Sudan and Ukraine, and it goes on and on. Do you think the way that we think about gender limits our ability to see the world at large? Looking at ourselves through a binary is limiting our ability. People say to me, this is our only solution. This is our only, what choice did we have? And I'm like, what binary world do we live in? Maybe you need to hire a bunch of trans non-binary people to come up with some ideas, since you literally have no creativity. None. I'm amazed. They're like, we don't like each other and we don't get along and we both think each other is a complete terrorist. Therefore, we're going to literally light each other on fire, rape and get bomb. This is our solution this is how we deal with life when we can't get along.
You're so right here. It's not just about challenging the gender binary. It's about challenging all binary thinking. This binary thinking that says us and them, good and bad, here and there. These are all false. What we've had to learn as non-binary people is that it is not only possible, but imperative to hold both, because holding both is truth. Truth is multidimensional. There's not one singular monopoly on truth. Truth is multivalent, and we have to hold, because the way that we navigate our lives is as shapeshifters. We are sometimes dad, sometimes mom, sometimes son, sometimes daughter, sometimes guardians. We're constantly shifting in roles, and we mean so many different things in the different spaces that we've been, and we played all sides. So we see ourselves in all sides. As I learn the history of trans and non-binary people in our traditions, there's a reason why we were called in times of conflict to negotiate between competing parties, to share stories and heal people. We can see beyond the binary, and we can actually recognize that that doesn't have to be the zero-sum thinking of one gain and one losses. It kind of goes to what we were saying before. Authenticity, we've learned, actually means if you live your best self, that helps me live my best self. It's not a competition. In fact, you coming into you galvanizes me to come into me. We unlearn the zero-sum thinking. We realize we all rise when one of us rises. So we bring these sensibilities into every political conflict. And it's disenchanting how binaries continue to masquerade as reasonable, as logical, as the only choice, when they're not. There's always a third path.
This is all I've been screaming for the past year. I think people think when I say non-binary, they're talking about my body part. What I'm talking about is my ability to understand and relate to all of you, to understand you, Israeli mother, you, Palestinian father, you, Iranian, Syrian. And I'm wondering, as you've thought about the discourse of the past year, if you think about Israel-Palestine, what do you think people are missing about their understanding of this?
When people talk to me about being non-binary, they think the hottest take I have is that I'm just not a boy or a girl. And I'm like, that's the bare minimum. My hottest take is compassion. Compassion means we have to find a way to respect the inherent dignity and worthiness of every single soul. And we have to operate from a frequency that is higher, even when we're called time and time again to participate in dehumanization, to participate in belittling. We have to actually maintain that higher ground. And
can you say that one more time? Because I think people need to really get what you're saying.
Yeah. It can feel very tempting to recreate the dehumanized we see in the world. But compassion requires us to refuse that temptation and insist on a higher truth, which is love. I genuinely believe that love is the path forward. Love does not mean that it's toothless or without policy or intervention. What love means is it's rooted in the fundamental appreciation of the dignity of every single life. Love requires us to understand that mourning is not a monopoly. We can mourn everyone. We can love everyone. That doesn't mean that we condone, enable, but it does mean we believe in people's capacity to transform. And I genuinely believe my experiences on earth as a trans person have helped me understand that transformation is possible. Similarly, how you transition from curmudgeonly to giggly, I transitioned from the depths of depression, which was fundamentally the only identity I had for the first maybe 18, 19 years of my life, to the depths of delight. And what I've seen is that within life, many lives are possible. I constantly see how things are in flux. So when I see a kind of fatalism that postures itself as realism, right? This is the way that it's always going to be. This is how things are. I'm like, no, reality is continually being constructed, and it is possible to imagine better and more healed futures. And the way that we do that, the way that we create a better and more healed future, is by acting differently.
Yeah.
And to act differently is to hold love as our compass.
We got to do something about this, but we're going to talk about that. You are one of my few friends who is queer, non-binary, South Asian, Middle Eastern, Asian, that wants power and thinks about power. A lot of our friendship has been about the two of us are often in these white, cis, heteronormative rooms where we're the outlier, where we're being tokenized, or we're educators, or there to sort of keep it interesting. When you roll into those spaces with people who see you as other, and we're in those rooms together, how does it feel for you to be in those spaces and survive it?
People are only able to see us as other because they don't accept themselves. So immediately when you're in it, you go into a kind of panic mode of being like, am I wrong? Am I horrible? Am I a bad person? And then you have to actually do this kind of Simone Biles level of backflipping to be like, no, I'm me and I get to be here. And all this is other people's projection. It's gotten easier and easier for me to do that. In the beginning, it would take me a long time to be able to disentangle other people's projections from my reality. Now I've got practices put into place, mantras I recite, things I tell myself to actually be like, no, I get to be me. Because one of the things I do is take logically what's being asked of me. What's often asked of me in these spaces is to make myself more digestible, tone it down to make people more comfortable. I did that for the first 18 years of my life, and I wanted to kill myself. It doesn't actually bring me where I want to go. It leads me to spiritual depletion. So I have to make a different choice. Not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone's going to get it. A lot of people are going to find me irritating or grating. Love and light, I get to be me. And that's not to say that this work is easy. I mean, I'm speaking about it in this cavalier way because I've been in it for so long. There are times when it feels more exhausting than others. Like, it's 2024, really? Are you still concerned about what I look like? Let's move the focus away from me and my appearance towards the world and so many other issues we should be addressing. There are days that it's more defeating, but I think that what I always return to is this quiet genius that we learned as kids. This line of thinking of making ourselves palatable doesn't actually work. What I've noticed in my career is that the more myself I am, the more I've magnetized the people I was meant to meet. The narrative I had before was you're going to repel people, but now my larger narrative is to make space for the people that you were meant to meet. And there's a lot of really great people in the world. It can feel easy to say you hate all people or everyone's bad, but I think there's a lot of really great, good-spirited, warm-hearted, open-minded people who, when you lead from authenticity, want that, and bring that too. How are you going to find those people if you're not being yourself?
I think a lot of people look at someone like you or me and they see us building social equity. They see us building influence. There's no other way for us to do those things without being a part of those spaces, even if we feel uncomfortable. I remember you and I had a conversation that it was breathtaking for me because this equity, this power, this social, cultural, monetary success feels life and death. It doesn't feel life and death because I want supercars or mansions. What I really want is safety.
Mm.
Safety for me isn't like a metaphor.
Mm.
It's almost like an obsession. My desire to build relevance or financial success is about being able to afford safety where safety isn't guaranteed. For me, not for you. I remember you and I having that conversation. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah.
Do you think people understand this is such a huge driving reality for us? Or do you think they just think we're like, how do you think people see you as you are gaining influence and quote unquote power?
I guess I just don't think about that because it's not my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
My responsibility is to show up as me. Other people are going to interpret that as they will, and that's cool. But when we fixate on how other people are perceiving us, we become less attuned to who we actually are. And that's a dangerous route. It's a tempting route. People pleasing is a tempting place, but it doesn't offer us what it promises. What I've found is that safety doesn't come from external validation. Safety comes from authenticity. And no one is entitled to my interior life. I get to protect it, nurture it, and cultivate it. If you'd asked me this 5-6 years ago, I'd have a very different answer. But now I really like me and I trust me. I know my motivations and I know why I'm showing up the way that I am. And I believe in myself. And I think it pisses off people when oppressed people believe in themselves because they want you to be deferential. They want you to be submissive, to prioritize their points of view over your own. They want you to recreate your fundamental immigrant family dynamics and abstract them to the world, to be a dutiful daughter or dutiful boy, to not actually be you. I don't believe in that. I don't subscribe to that. I get to be me. People are going to have reaction, but like clouds, they come and go. But what doesn't is my own self-reflection. So what matters most to me is that I'm not betraying myself.
Will you talk to us a little bit about when this channel turned inside of you and your aunt? She was a very famous lesbian visibility activist, Arvashi Vaid. She passed away 2 years ago, right? And you grew up in this very academic family that was really valued thinking and thought. Tell me, as someone whose aunt was an icon of this type of work, meant something to everyone that I know, what did she teach you?
So much. I was walking on this Upper West Side pier on West 70th Street where we used to hang out. And I realized I hadn't been there since I was with her. I just sat down on a bench and I just have these moments of overwhelming gratitude of just how lucky I was to have someone who defied gender norms in my life as a kid to show me that that was possible. And then also taught me self-respect. What Orvishi really installed in me is like, not everyone's going to like you, but what matters is that you like you. She taught me that who I was worth fighting for. She was such a fighter. Anytime anyone slighting me, she would just come in. What can I do? She would just have this go-getter attitude of like, we can change anything. And idealism wasn't even idealism to her. It was her realism. She would talk about how are we going to overthrow right-wing authoritarianism in the next year. That wasn't seen as far-fetched. It was just like, okay, what do we do? There's a sense of commitment to changing the world and defending what you find sacred and beautiful. And I think now in the halo of her death, that's when I really see, oh, she installed in me hope. Many people don't have hope, but I had hope as a guardian that helped me through my most abysmal times of being like, oh, these two can change because there are people in the world who are change agents who are making it better. And so I don't think hope is the same thing as optimism. What hope is grit. It's not. Optimism is often more passive, presuming that the world will get better. What hope is involving yourself in the world to make it better. And that's what she really did. What she also really did for me was teach me the importance of friendship. Even before I had any of these frameworks of chosen family, she would bring her lesbian best friends to all of her family vacations, events, holidays. Every time we were in a city together, she would have her own gaggle of gays everywhere. She was constantly in touch with people. She was step parents to all these kids I never even met. She was just so imbricated in everyone's life. And it was the most abundant social network ever because it wasn't just defined by her romantic relationship. So in that way, she taught me that being lesbian, being queer is not just about who we're sleeping with. It's about how we built relations with the entire world. There was so much love in her world, her orbit. It was like her name was a password and I could say it. And then all of the lesbians of a certain generation would just open their doors and be like, yeah, what do you need? It gave me so much hope in this idea of chosen family that we can be something so much greater. And she sustained and watered those relationships. She called people, she emailed them, she checked up on them. So I think that's why she passed. Everyone was so overwhelmed because she was actually a formidable presence in their life. It wasn't just a mythological character. She was there. She cared. She mentored. That's why I take friendship very seriously. I don't see it as an escape from the political work. I actually see it as the very practice of it. It's easy to diagnose what's wrong with the world. What is more difficult is to show up in a different way with each other. And that's what friendship's about.
As you say that, I think about you standing in my kitchen with Neve just staring at you wide-eyed because he likes to wear dresses sometimes. And what a blessing it is to have people in my life that can show my son a different way of being masculine. I think that is so amazing when I think about it. You recently had a film directed about you. Alex Hedison directed a short. I saw it. It premiered at Sundance. I know it's been touring all over the world and country. It's stunning, beautiful. It really resonated with myself and Roya. We were so moved. In the film, you talk about pronouns and you say, instead of they, them, what if we use we, us? Can you unpack that for us?
What I've been riffing about on stages these days is how the most controversial pronoun in America is not they, it's we. In a world that is so sectarian, polarized, divided, we and us are fragile bridges that insist on us to always think, what is the point of commonality? It's a mode of thinking that resets the algorithm. The algorithm has taught us that the person on the other side of the screen has nothing in common with you and that your souls are diametrically opposed. And what we actually says is, what is our common ground and how do we move from there? And that's my compass. That's how I want to exist in the world. And I only can do that when I'm doing that internally. So what we makes me do internally is to not just think that I can be proud. I'm also going to have shameful days. Not just think that I'm going to feel powerful. I'm also going to have weak days. It's about embracing all of that breadth of human experience. And once I embrace myself as a spectrum, I can see the world so much more as a spectrum. And I think that's a reoccurring theme in our conversation is like the connections between this intimate work, this healing work, and healing the world work, this macro work. They have to be connected. And I think what often gets missing is people will occupy themselves with external things and leave unattended to their own shadow work. And so we came from doing my own shadow work of actually realizing what I hate in the world lives in me. I am implicated in everything I find wrong in in the world. And so therefore I cannot participate in a moral righteousness that sees me as somehow superior than others. Within every bigot, I'm there too. Those thoughts are in me too. I've said crueler things to myself than anything anyone else ever said to me. That gives me a point of entry. Oh, you hate me? I hated me too. Cool. Let's talk about it. It gives us a way to actually move past that. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do at the end of the day is to abolish loneliness. I mean, that's my ultimate creative project. And it can feel really lonely to exist in the world when you think you're the only person who feels what you are. What we actually reminds me is I might be the only person saying it out loud, but that doesn't mean I'm the only person that feels it. And in fact, when I say it out loud, there's going to be someone who says, I feel the exact same way. And so truth gets us to that us. When we say the thing that's difficult or thorny or complicated or nuanced or wild, then we find each other, and that's how we grow bigger.
As a recovering curmudgeon, now giggler, this film really resonated with me, and I really hope that everyone gets to see it. I thought it was so gorgeous, and I think the message of we, us is incredibly important now. I think my final question for you is, if you had a request of people in the world right now who are trying to reset their algorithms, what is your request of people today?
My request of people is to give themselves the grace to suspend the story of who they thought they were and give birth to something they can't even recognize. You don't have to play pretend anymore. You get to decide today, I'm going to become something else. And it's never too late. The ship has never sailed. At any moment, you can protest this version of yourself and try again. And the only way you will give yourself permission to do that is grace. I know that it might seem like anxiety and self-criticism are actually going to be the devices that help you get there. They're not. They're going to keep you clamped down in misery. What grace allows you to do is to be like, I'm just trying my best in a really hard world. And grace it's my mobilizing force. And I've seen the way that it's reset my algorithm. So I hope it can help reset yours.
You have an incredible Goodreads. You are an avid reader. What's a book right now that you think everyone should pick up in addition to your books? And we'll be sharing that with all of our listeners. But what's a good reading right now that you think people should pick up?
Okay, well, this is me furthering my own nerdy agenda. My favorite book series in the world is called The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. It's now an Amazon Prime TV series if people want to start there. I started reading these books when I was 10 years old, and I think I've read them maybe 5 times each. Last week, I did a podcast on trans fans of the Wheel of Time series, and I literally cried. I was like, oh my God, there's like a... When I was a kid, that book taught me magic, and magic saved my life. In times like this, when everything feels miserable and all the frameworks that we have are orienting us towards mass suffering, what we need is a belief in magic. I think that's where we can return to literature and fantasy and sci-fi as a way to be like, no, there's things that are unexplainable that are possible.
Okay. We will definitely share that with everyone. And then what are a few social accounts that you think would be great for people to follow? This is coming from a person who is, for everyone listening, this person is very, very, very specific about who they follow. So this
I'm
is
actually I'm off socials right now completely.
Why?
Which is really exciting.
Why are you off social?
I just wanted to reset myself. And It's been really amazing to be with myself and think. So I've not actually been on accounts right now. I remember this thing called social media, but I haven't been on it for a couple weeks.
I think more people than you know have been deleting Instagram off their phone because it's like, I can't even tell you what I saw there this morning. It's terrible. That's it. That's the show. You were amazing. I love you. I can't think of anything else to say to you except that I miss you and I'll see you soon.
See you later. Thanks for having me.
That's it. All right, that's it for today. If you felt that, drop a comment, share with someone, or bring it to the next conversation you have. Follow Reset the Algorithm on Substack and all social platforms for more context, more questions, and fewer filters. This is not content. This is the reset. Catch you on the next one. Reset the Algorithm is a space for conversation, reflection, and perspective, not a substitute for professional advice or support. The ideas shared here are meant to inform, inspire, not to diagnose, treat, or guide personal, medical, legal, or financial decisions. Please consult a qualified professional for anything related to your individual needs.